Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. It really is an exciting weekend coming down the tracks with Cork against Dublin in the All-Ireland Hurling semi-final on Saturday and Tipperary and Kilkenny on Sunday. We're joined by two of the greats, Tyrrell and Brendan Cummins. Thanks very much, lads. We couldn't really get anybody else to join us. Rory and myself asked about 20 lads, but here we are. We're so delighted that you joined us. And of course, the great Rory O'Neill is with us as well. So the crack is mighty and the intelligent conversation is about to begin. So what's it like on a Friday, Thursday, whatever, looking forward to an All-Ireland semi-final involving your two counties, Tipperary and Kilkenny? Because it's like the good old days. There was something special about Tipp and Kilkenny, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is, Marty. There's no doubt it is. It's like everywhere you go, everyone's talking about it. Like as a player, you want to stay in this famous bubble as best you can, but it's just impossible. And I think as a group, I know back in the day, we would have said, look, Kilkenny obviously were an absolutely full flow at the time, going in 09, like they were going for the 4 in a row at that stage. And they had a huge experience. We'd been beaten by Waterford the year before. We're probably more focused on the fact that we couldn't get to the final the year before. And it was a great opportunity to play Kilkenny. And then if you fast forward to the next year, when you suddenly expectation on your shoulders, and Marty, that's a different sensation of a Thursday or Friday for us, certainly anyway, going into the second game against Kilkenny. And we knew then as well, all the pressure was obviously on Kilkenny. But no, the build up to the couple of days before it, you really look forward to being with the group. I always did anyway. And you felt a comfort when you're with the lads. And, you know, you'd always have the crack and a laugh. And it felt like there wasn't a game going on at all half the time because of the messing and the blackguarding that'd be going on. But everybody realised we need to take the edge off. But when it's on, it's on. And I know Jackie will probably say the same. When you're sitting in that dressing room before, 10 minutes before it's time to go out, and there's that little bit of silence and the odd lad is shouting and roaring, I don't think you ever feel more alive than that moment in time, because that's when the real pressure is on. You're sitting there thinking about it. The sweat's rolling down the middle of your back and you haven't really done any warm up, you know, all that kind of stuff. And that's why you play the game, just to have that sensation, that fight or flight feeling, I suppose, and the excitement that when you go out into the cauldron, the roar will fire all the senses and you just start to play like.
So, Jackie, for you, from winning All-Ireland medals, I know is very, very important. It's what fellas like Rory O'Neill and myself dream about, but you've done it. So what's it like? Is it different with Tipperary in the other dressing room, be it an All-Ireland semi-final or final?
There's no doubt about it, Marty. There is. When the old enemy come, you draw against them. It just brings a different element to you, to your preparation, to your psychology, to the county. I always remember 2013 when Dublin bet us on a Saturday evening. After replay, I'd say it was probably the worst state in terms of guys' physicality. We were so many injuries. And the best thing we possibly could have got was a draw against Tipperary, because there's nothing like your rivals to just, everything goes out the window, whether you're injured or half injured. You just got to get on that field, because you can't afford to let your neighbours get one up on you, you know. And it just brings out that beautiful rivalry, you know, where, you know, hurling it's not life or death, but for this week for Kilkenny and Tipperary, it is life or death, and particularly up along the border where, you know, Urlingford, Kilmanagh, Ballingarry, Mullinahone, for them it's life or death, and the crack has started already in terms of signs being put up and this county going over and taking down these signs and all this kind of stuff. It's a huge rivalry, and I suppose probably maybe from 09 to maybe 013, maybe people got their fill of it, and then it stopped, and there was only intermittent meetings. But by God, this is coming at a great time. It's a beautiful rivalry. I know that's a weird word to use. It's huge respect for both counties. You know, and I suppose maybe from a Kilkenny point of view, Tipp have got the upper hand on us in the minor 2 years ago in Nolan Park. Brendan's team came to Nolan Park this year and bet us. So probably a bit of pressure coming on from a Kilkenny point of view that, look, we can't just afford for Tipp to beat in his minor, under 21 and senior, and that bit of pressure is there. But it's you don't want to be anywhere else. As a Kilkenny hurler, as a Tipperary hurler, going to Nolan Park or going to Croke Park All-Ireland semi-final weekend to be put up against your greatest rivalry, man, if that doesn't evoke something special inside you, nothing will.
I'm just wondering there, just if I can stay with you in your own playing days, and you're in a dressing room. If I go to you first, Brendan, who were the characters? Who were the ones that were roaring and shouting and thumping each other on the back? And who was the quiet lad in the corner? What was that cocktail of personalities like in any dressing room, and indeed with your own under-20 team this year? Because we all have different personalities, but in your playing days, who were the leaders? Who were the people who were doing all the talking and roaring? Or was that going on?
I think it was. I think the important thing is whether it's on the field or off the field before a game, you have to be yourself. So if you're a talker, you talk. And if you're not a talker, you sit there and you try to keep inside in your own world. And that's the important thing, because when the ball is thrown in, you have to be right. But back in the day, I suppose Declan Fanning would have been a very big talker for us, like around the dressing room. I'd be chirping a little bit, but I seem to give most of my time the warm-up room away, because to be honest, Marty, if you're a goalie psyched out of your head and you want to kill everyone, it's very hard, and you stand inside in the goals. There's no one to hit on the umpire, like, so it can be a bit of a disaster that way. But
that's why Jackie Tyrrell stayed up at the other end. He knew of your reputation.
And I was glad he was up there as well, because I saw the physio table at half time and after matches, and he was finished putting lads for the meat grinder up the other end. But what you call it? So yeah, it is. I mean, Shane McGrath would always be chirpy enough and have a little bit of a smirk inside in the dressing room as well around. But yeah, it is. And I suppose with the underage development of players, I'd always try to say to fellas, if you talk. If you don't, there's no need to, because some fellas have enough pressure, Marty, on their plate in that environment without feeling I have to say something. In reality, you have to do something, and do something is out on the pitch. But we all would have a leadership group within all the team. It would filter down throughout the course of the previous 6 to 12 months, and you're together. The lads would talk. The lads would talk too much. Everyone would go, will you shut up, or fed up of listening to you? Do you know what I mean? And that's the way it would work. But in that pressurized environment, the last thing you want is complete silence in a dressing room. All you can hear is the air conditioning fan. Now, Liam Sheedy would have lined us up in our positions 1 to 15 all around him, and he'd go through every one of our jobs before we start. He'd have the stopwatch thing in his hand and the whistle, and he'd go around and he'd point at you. This is what you have to do today. He'd have the last word out then into the warm-up room for the circle, where the team would have their last word. And then Owen Kelly would have his tuppence word. Larry, I remember at the time, would have said something as well, which had been quite unusual for Larry. He wouldn't normally have spoken out, but he said something before we went out onto the pitch. So all those little things. But I think there's also the panel, right? And it's really important. Like Shamie Cannon spoke before the All-Ireland final in 10. And I don't know, was he prompted to speak by Liam Sheedy, or he spoke himself in the dressing room before like in training, when the team was called out, and he just said, I'm disappointed not playing, but I'm going to do everything I can to help Tipperary to win. And that actually filled me with more leaving that session than anything anyone ever said to me, because he was a young fella. He had been dropped essentially the year before. He'd been amazing. People were talking about he should be getting an All-Star. Then suddenly he's not playing the All-Ireland final. And for a young man to say that, I just said, Jeannie Mac, like, if this means this much for him to win, why am I being so goddamn nervous about thinking about myself? I need to do something to help everyone else as well. So there's little things that people say and speak that wouldn't normally speak that resonate with you. And that was one moment in 10 now, I must say, that was really had a big impact on all of us, I think.
About your dressing room, Jackie, did you talk a lot, or were you the shy retiring type?
Yeah, shy retiring. Marty, this is Jackie Tyrrell.
Yeah, I like to try to be talking on the field, Marty, but no,
I say that again.
I wasn't one of the vocal ones, but look, we had a very, very strong dressing room in terms of vocal leaders. Obviously, Brian was very dominant, and he would be quite strong in the vocal and driving standards and meshes. But I suppose Henry would have been very strong. Martin Comfort would have spoke, and then you would have probably had a variety of lads that don't speak, but at times come in, and when they talk, like Brendan said, you're not used to hearing their voice, and suddenly your ears pick up a bit more. Noel Hickey, when he spoke, God, you go through the wall as soon as he starts speaking. Tommy Welsh, JJ. So at different times, different lads stepped up. But look, Brian was such a big, strong character. I mean, when he's in the warm-up area and the hat wasn't on at this stage, but the fist is clenched and he's spitting in the hands and the veins are popping out through that red his you know you're ready to go. So they were kind of the scenarios. You know, we would keep it very relaxed. Everyone to do their own thing, get the jerseys on, a few short words in the actual dressing room, and then when you moved into the warm-up area, you did your warm-up. The communication level went up a little higher, the intensity went up a little higher, the body language went up a little higher, and you could suddenly feel. But it's an amazing build up as you go out through the week. I always felt that the crack and all that stopped as soon as you got on the bus after your bite eat in Dublin and you're heading for Nolan Park, and suddenly you see your first Kilkenny jersey on the side of the street, your first Tipperary jersey, the sirens of the guard escort are echoing in your ears. The music of the lad across you with the earpods in is blaring out, and there's just silence on the bus in terms of people chatting. And from that point, it's kind of an eerie kind of atmosphere within the group. But you know, in the back of your mind, that's a good sign. Silence is good at this point because lads are going into their own little zone. And then when you get into the dressing room, it starts to build up from there. But it's an amazing feeling. Even talking about here now, I can get images of that door opening up in the warm-up area and that wall of noise and actual heat coming in that door as you come out, and out you go. And it's everything you've worked for all year long. This is the time now where you bring it.
And it's weird, isn't it, Jackie? Like, you're inside there, and Marty, you can hear a thing like there could be 70,000 outside going off their tree, right? And you're inside and you'd hear a pin drop. You'd hear a ball bouncing on the dressing room floor. It's like there's nothing going on out there at all. Like, it's weird. I came in at one stage to go to the toilet before the parade started. And I ran into the dressing room. There was two lads sitting down. This 4 All-Ireland final, I think it was 10. The two boys are sitting down, two of the stewards sitting down, drinking a cup of tea inside in the dressing room. When the door closed behind me, it was like I was in my sitting room. Do you know what I mean? I was togged out with all my gear on, about to go out and play an All-Ireland final. I met the president actually going out through the corridor again. But it's so surreal like that. It's so quiet. And then you go out into that craziness. Like, it's a weird flip of emotion. Like,
I mean, we're very emotional, and we're not even playing. We're just lucky and privileged to be observers, Rory and myself and hundreds of thousands of others. But when you see, you don't have to be from Tipperary and Kilkenny to get an adrenaline rush. When you see hurlers running out onto the field, out that tunnel, and that wall of noise that is incredible, because it is a celebration. And this weekend is a festival. But let me ask you, when you get the call, the knock comes on the door, as I've seen it done from outside, you hear it and somebody says, "This is it, lads. This is what we dreamt about. This is what we need to do." And you run down the corridor. What is that like, that moment, from silence, as you said, Brendan and Jackie, to suddenly seeing daylight, sunshine, light, noise?
Freedom for me is the word I'd use. That we're now in the arena that I'm most comfortable. Like, I'm back in my comfort zone, because that's what you're trained to do. Like, I hit the ball up in the air 3 times and catch it, and then head over for the 4 to go in, and then suddenly I'm with Darren or whoever the goalie was, and we're starting our warm up, and it's game on, and it's what you're most comfortable doing. So you're very focused, like Jackie said. Everything you're doing is. Some lads love thinking about it. I didn't like to think too much about the game, because you start to get a load of nervous energy going, and your arms get heavy and your legs get heavy, and it's just a disaster. Whereas out in the pitch, you're hitting the ball, you're back to being that child playing in Grove Park. The players are being called out in the screen, the noise is going, like, it's just amazing. But you're in that zone then where this is what I'm trained to do. I have a job to do. Let's get warmed up to do it. So it's a lot easier, I always found, on the pitch. It's just great that way. Like,
And for you, Jackie?
Oh, I'd be fit to kill someone at that point. I'd be like, I wouldn't, like, at that point, I'm like a volcano. I've been building all week. I have been in my own little world. I've been carb loading since Wednesday. I have so much energy and fire inside me and hatred and everything wrapped up. At that point, I'm going to kill someone if I don't get out that door soon. And I welcomed meeting the president, because I needed that 15, 20, 25 minutes to cool down and to get me head, because I'm in a place, I'm probably over the top, but I like being there, kind of, you know. If I met the president probably going out the tunnel, I'd probably hit my shot, you know, that kind of way. But you're just in that zone, and you need, as Brendan said, you need that release. You need to get on the field and get out and do 3 or 4 sprints, you know, run around the place, drive the ball over the net, and just let off that bit of steam that's just been building and piping since Thursday into Friday into Saturday. And then I can start to breathe. And then you just walk around, few deep breaths, look into the stand, look down at the old enemy, picture the lad that you're going to be marking, eyeball him, and then you're into the warm-up. And then you slowly kind of build up again. But it's a kind of it's an eruption at that point, Marty. But you don't want to erupt too much. You want to leave some of that lava left inside for the Tipp lads.
I'd hate to be the corner forward going in to shake your hand.
I'm suddenly glad I'm the goalie still, to be honest with you. But anyway.
a volcano. But this weekend, and Rory, we're observers, the two of us. I'm very privileged to be, I suppose, there with the lads at the weekend. But this weekend it just feels different. It is the great old days of Tipp and Kilkenny, which I know we sometimes slag the two lads, but we still love it. And now we've a new emerging team in Dublin because we didn't expect them to be there. But if they can produce what they did against Limerick, my God, we're expecting a humdinger on Saturday in Croke Park. But it is a kind of a festival because it's a bit of old and there's a bit of new, and I mean that in a complimentary way to Dublin.
Yeah, and like I think Dublin are like almost like the wild card this weekend insofar as nobody really expected them to be there. But I think there's a freshness to it, and that might seem almost sort of hypocritical in some ways when you consider that you've three of the big three, let's call them, all there, because it's been a long time for all of them. I mean, Tipperary are the most recent winners, and that's all of 6 years ago. And that was the last time that Tipperary and Kilkenny have met in the championship. And I think that's why people are so excited for this weekend as well. I was watching, I put together a show many years ago, and Brendan and Jackie very kindly contributed to it. And I was watching it again there. It's on YouTube, actually. It's Tipp Kilkenny, the trilogy. It's look, it was in the early days. The production values mightn't have been what they would be now. It was still very well put together, in my view. Of course, I would say that. But there was a fantastic.
To be fair,
there was a fantastic part. Like, I mean, Jackie and Tommy are together, Brendan and Lara are together, and as I said, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube for anybody that might want to watch it. And there was just really a really interesting part with Brian Cody where he was talking about the Tipp Kilkenny rivalry specifically, and he made the point that in his entire career he never played against Tipperary in the championship. And I just thought that was incredible. I mean, I don't know how long Brian Cody played senior hurling for Kilkenny. It must have been over 10 years, Jackie, at least.
Yeah,
anyway.
It was, yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah.
And for him to never have crossed paths with Tipp in that time just gives you an indication that I think this is a particular fixture that we all love because, I mean, it's just one of those story fixtures. It just happens a little too infrequently for my liking. And that's why I think people are so excited for this weekend. It's just one of those fixtures that I think it brings out the best in both of them. And I think it tees it up so well. I just can't wait for both games. Obviously on Saturday from a purely, I suppose, selfish point of view, but Sunday as well. I mean, the narrative and the storylines and the plot lines and obviously the two counties being borderline, and it's just look, it's teed up, and I think there should be two good contests, but like there is something really special about Tipp Kilkenny for me.
Now, the 2025 championship has many stories. I suppose the Munster championship has been highlighted as incredible, and we had that match. That Munster hurling final, Brendan, you were with me in the commentary position with the first time penalties. And yet, the story, I think, of the championship so far has to be Dublin beating Limerick. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt. Fairness to Neil O'Carrick after the game, he said, we were written off and we were the underdogs and all. Well, they were for a very good reason. Like, I mean, I suppose they had gotten close to Kilkenny in the round robin stage and Galway as well in 5 or 6 points between it. And, it was a normal thing that it was the narrative, I suppose, before the game was that Limerick are coming up. It's a great test drive for Limerick, getting ready for an All-Ireland semi-final to get a run out in Croke Park and all. But in fairness to Dublin on the day, and Jackie spoke about it there, I think as a player, hurling especially, unless you're out of your mind, you're no good. And you have to be angry and you have to be bitter and twisted and all that stuff to make you run harder than the opponent. And in fairness to Dublin, on that day, they ran Limerick into the ground. Limerick looked like they were in the slow lane. And that was really due to the energy, I think, that Dublin brought. And they just caught Limerick with that wall of enthusiasm. And I say caught in that they were ready for the fight and Limerick weren't. And they were better than Limerick on the day. They got the 2 goals, the goals they deserved and gave them that platform to get them over the line to finish. But there's no doubt like that Dublin again coming in this weekend. Everyone's saying, look, they had their day in the sun now in the quarterfinal. It was great for Raoul Dublin. Do you know that kind of patronising feel? If I'm a Dublin player, I'm like Jackie now going out to tunnel. I can't wait to meet a fella in a red jersey. I can't wait to go face guard to face guard with him and see what he's made of. And let's see what happens at the end of that, because Dublin have the athleticism that's needed to go against Cork. I suppose the question for them is going to be, can they sustain that intensity man for man around the pitch for the 70 minutes that's going to be needed? But certainly Dublin, there's no doubt, have earned their position in this All-Ireland semi-final. That's just the way it is, and that's the way hurling is. They were ready for the last day, and they produced it when the need was most.
Do you agree with all of that, Jackie? I mean, in the sense of the story, as we head into this weekend of All-Ireland semi-finals, Dublin still, despite the Munster Championship being wonderful and the incredible Munster final we got in the penalties and the historic nature, the headline act as we go into this weekend is actually Dublin.
It probably just about Pip's Kildare's performance and winning the Joe McDonagh, which was an outstanding feat. But I suppose when you stack up where Limerick were coming from and where Dublin were coming from, and then to lose Chris Cummins after 14 minutes, I feel it probably is the story of the championship so far. The manner in which they won, and at that point when Adam English draws the game and asks that question of Dublin, puts a point up.
Yeah, 1918. Yeah.
How Dublin respond with the 2 goals. I think it is because there's just a bit more on it over. Look, the Kildare story is fabulous, but this is Limerick we're talking about. You know, with all due respect, Kildare Betleash beating Limerick, where they're coming from. I just thought it was an outstanding performance. The one thing I would say is, and Brendan's talking about, can they sustain it? Well, they have sustained it against Limerick. They did it with 14 men. And Brendan's question is very valid. Can they do it again a couple of weeks later against a Cork team that are probably a bit more athletic than this Limerick team? But like I give Dublin a really good chance. I do, because they now showed that they can play with the best hurlers, and they showed a level of maturity, a skill set. How, you know, Conor Burke, his scores, Conor McHugh, how he defended. The big question is, will Hedgerow start edge of the square? I feel the way he contributed, I think he should. But it's the maturity that they played with, how they used the ball. They answered all the questions. And of course they were underdogs. They were written off completely. And rightly so, considering their patchy performances to that point. But they stitched together 75 minutes of absolute intense top-level execution hurling against one of the greatest teams ever. And when you stack that up, that is definitely the story of 2025 to this point.
You know, here we are, whatever, the first weekend in July, and we're at the semi-final stage of the championship. We have the 2 games this weekend, and then we have the All-Ireland final, and then the championship is over. It just seems so early. But I suppose what I want to do is emphasize the celebration that we all love that hurling has given us all through the last couple of months. But it is a pity it's not being extended a small bit. Or would you agree with that? I'm probably already lonesome about the hurling championship is coming to an end very quickly.
Yeah, I think we're caught between, you know, the first Sunday in September was always a traditional thing. I don't feel we can go to that point with the club, but I definitely think there's probably a halfway mark where we can meet it. Should this probably be played up to the start or the middle of August, which would give us another month from the All-Ireland final. It's probably just too condensed, Marty. If you give that another month and finish the middle of August, there's little pockets of gaps that you can give in between these matches to let it breathe, to let us talk and draw our breath about outstanding games this weekend before we go straight into the next game, because we haven't time. You know, you go to games the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, you're looking forward to the next game. You're not really reflecting on the outstanding games the weekend. You know, and even the Joe McDonagh winners, how challenging is it for them to 6 days later, after a couple of days, maybe been out celebrating as well? So I definitely feel we need to move it at least a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. And if we did that, I think we would be landing on the sweet spot in terms of giving it enough airtime, promoting our game properly. And that's probably something that would need to be looked at as well, as how we're promoting the game. And it was unfortunate that there was no Dublin lads put in front of the media, because for Dublin hurling, imagine putting Conor McHugh in front of the media this week. Imagine putting Paddy Doyle, who we don't really know a whole lot about, but were outstanding against Limerick, to get their insight, how it felt to beat Limerick, what that was like when Chris Cummins went down. Imagine getting those stories out. I think it'd be brilliant for the game, but particularly for Dublin hurling.
Yeah, it's one thing too, Jackie, I think, and it's every year we talk about the managers won't let players come out, and there's a hesitancy always to try to let fellas out to say something because it could be weaponized by the opposition. But in the spirit of promoting the game, I do think the media nights and all that kind of thing, like, it is important. We see the face of the players, the personalities that are there, and these are adults. Like, they're all well capable of saying their feelings about a game. They won't give that in a way. Like, there's no Tipper Kilkenny lad going to come out and say the other crowd are useless. Like, you know what I mean? There's none of that kind of crap going to go on. There's too much respect around the place. But just to get the character and personality, I think that is an important part. But if you think of, we'll say, the third place team in Munster this year, Tipperary, they had 4 matches in 6 weeks. When they got out of that fucking, what cauldron we'll call it, or out of that fucking group of death, then they had 3 weeks before they played another match. So it was all going on. Then the championship was over, and then we start a new championship. Do you know what I mean? So the flow and the rhythm coming along. But definitely, I think if we push it back 3 weeks, it also opens up no penalties after a provincial final, whether it could be Leinster or Munster. You see where Dublin have come from now. Next year, they're going to put a huge push into Leinster. They're going to be chasing down Kilkenny, certainly, trying to build on what's happened this year. So who knows? There could be a draw in Leinster at some stage. So, I mean, I think that gives you more space, Marty, as well, to allow replays in provincial finals. And I think we need that in our calendar also. Like,
and Marty, just one small point as well. And I know football has dominated a lot of the headlines because, look, football had been so bad for so long, it couldn't have gotten any worse. And look, the rules have been a sort of a massive boost from a football perspective. But the Hurling Championship and the hurling year has been outstanding. I mean, like Jackie mentioned Kildare, that was an incredible story. Like the Munster campaign was a lot better, I think, than people gave it credit for. And we finished with like one of the great Munster finals and all the drama that was attached to that. And you mentioned about the penalties. Dublin have obviously created one of the results in the history of hurling. I think Christy O'Connor rightly mentioned possibly the greatest upset maybe in 50 years. We shouldn't forget Tipperary winning the under-20s. Tipp hadn't won an under-20 for quite a while, and Waterford have won the minor All-Ireland. So like there's been a load of really, really good things happening in the hurling landscape that I think sometimes we tend to forget. And it's probably a result of the sort of, as Don Logue likes to call it, the microwave nature of the championship, that it all gets lost a little bit on all of that. And I think it's been a really, really good year with 3 massive games and 2 fantastic weekends still to come.
Just going back from a very selfish point of view from the media, I mean, I don't understand why people are not willing to allow their players to talk, because Derek Ling did a press conference on his own. Declan Laffin and Craig Morgan did Tipperary, Pat Ryan did Cork, and Dublin didn't do anything. We do need to see these hurlers, and they're all bright, intelligent lads.
Very smart.
But we do need to see them. The game still needs the oxygen of having a star, whether it be Donald Burke or Pat Horgan or whoever it is. And I do think, I feel there should be a charter. There is I think Jarlath Burns tried to kind of start the wheels in motion about relating it to money at the end of the year. But I think there should be a requirement of all counties to supply at least a manager and a player minimum, if not 2 players, when it gets to provincial finals and semi-finals and finals.
Yeah, well, I think it would help. Yeah,
I agree. Like, and even and I go back to Dublin. Like, we don't know Sean Curry, we don't know Brian Hayes, we don't know what their mentality is, what that meant to them.
We don't even know what they look like, Jackie.
Yeah, so like, God, just to like to even hear them this week and what that win even meant to, just to get an insight into the way they are and approaching the court. Like, you're not looking for them to come out with any crazy comments or anything like that. But the development of Dublin hurling, to have those lads front and centre, where young lads and people within Dublin are going, oh God, you see the interview of Brian Hayes? God, it was, you know what I mean? Just to get to what they could be great characters, but we just don't know. And to your point, Marty, we're not looking for exposure to the whole group. If there was a manager and 1 or 2 players, I just think it'd help promote the game so much more.
Funny you say that, because I did an interview on the radio. I think it was a Leinster club semi-final, and Nafina won it in Parnell Park. I forget exactly. I think it was against the Wexford champions. But I interviewed the Curry brothers on the radio, and mentioned about the fact that they played cricket for Ireland at underage. And I got about 15 or 16 texts just about the chat, because it was different. It was new and it was interesting. The 2 boys spoke so well, and really nice guys. And Nafina, in fairness, the club officers rang me afterwards and they were delighted with it. But what I'm saying is they would get that, and they would get that huge positive reaction by being out in the public domain.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, Marty, because I suppose if you look at it from why is this happening, we'll call it, right? So if you're a manager, you're saying to yourself, right, I want to build up a bit of a siege mentality here. Everyone's against us. The media doesn't like us. No one outside these four walls understands all that kind of stuff. The stuff me and Jackie would have been talking about back in the day, but we'd be more focused on, see that Kilkenny fella you're going meeting out there now. He's the enemy now, not anybody else, only him. Do you know what I mean? So that's the way it would have panned out. So we'd have went out and chatted away to the media and all that, and there would have been no problem. Declan Kyle years ago would have said to me, he said, if you're complaining about the headlines the following day, he said, you should have played better the day before. He said, you're in control of the headlines. You decide what they write the following day, nobody else. And I think if you take that attitude going into the game, then you're not afraid as such as what Marty or Dara or who's Elver is going to, or Joanne is going to talk about. Do you know what I mean? So it is something we do need to loosen up a bit on. It's tightening more and more every year. I do think Dublin have lost a bit of an opportunity here to promote the game that little bit more, to bring it to the schools, to get the personality like we've spoken about there, and to show we're not afraid. Like, we don't care what anyone thinks of us. We're just going to go out. Here's our ambassadors, talk about the game, talk harmless stuff, and then we're going to do our talking on the pitch Saturday evening when we meet those Cork lads. Yeah.
If the two of you were Dublin managers, would you have encouraged them to talk this week if you were in charge?
Well, it's about knowing your group and who's comfortable with you. But you can be guaranteed within that group of 15, 20, 30 Dublin lads, there's 2, 3, 4 lads that will be quite comfortable sitting in front of yourself, Marty, and just chatting things out. Like you said, the two Curry brothers were spoke really well.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'd have no problem with it. You know, you're not going to put 5 or 6 lads up, but if a manager and one player come up, I don't think it'll do any harm. I really don't. And actually, what was very interesting the weekend, or from Pat Ryan's piece, is what he said about picking dummy teams. And he said, I don't think it's fair on picking a lad, and then everywhere he goes, people telling him the best of luck, and he knows he's not playing because, you know, it's a dummy team. That kind of stuff, like, that's brilliant. To be able to get an insight into how Pat Ryan thinks and go, God, he actually cares that if he picks a lad and he's not playing, how he has to carry himself the next couple of days. Brilliant stuff. Will that be pinned up on a wall this weekend for Dublin? Absolutely not, but it's fabulous insight into Pat Ryan and the way he thinks.
And he named the team last night, Wednesday. It's quite early. I suppose the match is Saturday at the same time, but no real surprises either, I suppose.
Nice to see now he'll have a dummy team out this weekend.
Yeah.
I'll let you into a secret, lads. Rory O'Neill will be a last-minute sub for Cork.
I love Van Dublin, so.
In my dreams on Friday night, Marty.
But I suppose if I can bring you back, because there was a golden era and you were both involved let me just go back in the day when you were playing All-Ireland finals, Kilkenny going for 4 in a row, 5 in a row. That was an amazing time for you, I suppose, Jackie, in particular, in terms of Kilkenny, because you were part of an amazing team under Brian Cody.
It was amazing what you were winning, Marty, when you were losing. It wasn't amazing.
Well, you won a lot now.
Yeah. But look, I mean, it was amazing. The wins, the losses, it was brilliant, you know. And the great thing about it, people probably know that, like, us and the Tipp lads, we all went to college together. We knew each other well. All star tours, we'd have great crack together. And I think that kind of fed into the fact that then when we did meet each other, we would go to war with each other. But it epitomised the rivalry. And if you think how it was building, and Brendan spoke about 08, where they felt they missed the opportunity getting in 09, they should have bet us. And then in 10, they were on a mission, they came back. Then we bounced back in 11. And then in 13, we met. We just became so familiar with each other. We knew each other inside out, which kind of threw its own challenges because, you know, I was so used to marking Owen Kelly and Lara Corbett, didn't nearly know what I was having for breakfast. And likewise, the other way. And Brendan at the other end of the field, he knew what Henry would do, what Gurta would do. So that familiarity brought great kind of, you know, excitement, intensity. I know, and then you throw in the whole Brian Gavin thing with Tommy hitting him on the nose as well. It just seemed like it was a rivalry that had everything, and it was a time played when hurling was really, really allowed to flow, and we could just really go at it. So it just, you know, I look back on those times with great times, the wins as much as the losses, because the losses kind of galvanized you to come back the following year. And you know, we just couldn't see enough of each other, really.
Hey, were you in the pub, Jackie, in Buenos Aires after you beat in '09, I think? Remember Gorta was inside with Larry. And Henry was doing ads at the time for Lucasade. And what you call it, Gorta said to Larry, sure, Henry's on the telly warning you all year, Larry. You're not listening, like. And Larry was confused. Look, what are you talking about? Well, he's on every year, and the Lucasade ad talking about the last 15 minutes, he said, and you're not listening because they had won it in the last 10 minutes in that All-Ireland final. So, like, while we're all killing each other, suddenly we're halfway around the world and everyone's having a drink and having a laugh and all that. And then suddenly, like, obviously, when the hurls are picked up again, you're back in the trenches and we all want to kill each other again. But that was, like Jackie said, like, we'd have always known each other. I remember after, I think it was the '09 final, I met Henry, to do a thing below about looking back on the final. And Henry got in a bit late. And I remember afterwards we walked out together, and I'd say we didn't speak 2 words to each other going out, because he knew and I knew that I was coming for him, and he knew we were coming, and he wanted to hold on to what he had and all that psychology. So we walked out from the hotel in Kilkenny, got to our cars. I think we said good luck. And that was it, because we were back in wartime, we'll call it. It was back into November. And you know yourself, Jackie, you were sharpening the axe then again to say, I want to be back and they're not taking it from me. And I want what they have is my feeling going in. So all that stuff is just, it made what that mix that we had in those 3 years like.
Fabulous stories. And I mean, in terms of Brendan stopping Kilkenny going for 5 in a row and doing the 5 in a row, was that spoken about once the championship started? Was that the ultimate aim?
It wasn't the ultimate. Getting back to Kilkenny was probably the ultimate, was the aim when we started in January. And then Cork bet the life out of us below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And when we got that hide, and suddenly the aim was, we better win the next match and win the next match and win the next match. So that put manners in us, I suppose, is really what it did. And then suddenly, having won enough matches, we got back into Croke Park again. And to be fair to Kilkenny, we saw it a bit with Limerick over the last couple of years. No matter how much, I think, and Jackie might explain a bit more to this, what this feels like. No matter how much you try, it's just sometimes it might not be there when you go for it out of longevity and how much you put into the thing for the previous 4 or 5 years. I mean, there was busloads going down to training in Kilkenny. All this kind of stuff was going on. And that kind of filled us with confidence, because they're saying there's no one watching us train. They must all think we're useless. Do you know what I mean? So that gave us an extra bit of a push on. And Jackie, I suppose, after training, it might have taken you half an hour, 40 minutes more to get out after training, because like there was lads waiting to get autographs, and you'd always be good to the supporters. So you're half an hour to 40 minutes more before you got fueled, later going to bed. You know, all that kind of stuff, Marty, that all seeps in. And we just got to a point. And then Henry, of course, was injured and he had to go off. So all the stars aligned, and we played in 10. We probably played the best game we had in a number of years. And that all contributed, I suppose, to us getting across the line. Like,
go from back then to now, because this weekend, let's analyze these 2 amazing All-Ireland semi-finals, which I think they will be. I mean, do Cork have the advantage that they've had a rest, forewarned is forearmed, the changes that Pat Ryan has made that we now know?
In terms of the rest, I don't think so, no. I think Dublin had ample time to come down from the high of Limerick, refresh and go again. I think from a Cork point of view, I think they will have learned a harsh, valuable lesson against Limerick, in that no matter how good you are, you have to come with the mentality of hunting the other team down. And they got caught rotten that day against Limerick, and they've learned that lesson. And you feel there's a maturity within that group and with Pat Ryan that every time they hit the pitch that they are at a really, really high level. And look, Seamus Harndy's gone this weekend, and Declan Dalton comes in. So like they're spoiled for riches there. You know, Diarmuid Healy coming back in the last day. So they are at an advantage. Probably they're a little more progressed on than Dublin. But Cork would have an advantage over a lot of teams in terms of the athleticism and pace. They don't have it with this Dublin team, because in terms of S&C, that is probably one of the greatest performances of being able to go toe-to-toe with Limerick and not alone match them, but pass them out with 14 men. So I'd have no questions there in terms of Dublin, of where they're at. How they managed Brian Hayes inside will be crucial the weekend. That running game of how Shane Barrett and Diarmuid Healy interchange against Limerick, I thought that was fascinating and caused Limerick all types of problems. So look how they look after that with Chris Crummy gone. is going to be a huge challenge and something different that Cork will pose to them. But it's nicely teed up. Cork are obviously coming in as favourites due to winning the Munster. But like this Dublin team, they're resolute, they're resilient, they know how to win, which is really important. They've figured out a way with 14 men to beat Limerick. I know Limerick were on the slide a small bit, but they still figured it out. This is Limerick with some exceptional generation hurlers. How they dealt with Keane Lynch, which is always a conundrum. It was really, really, really smart. So they're very well set up as a team. They have a great management team who are very intelligent on the sideline, and they are going to ask serious questions of this Cork team.
Suppose I heard Angie Daly the other day on Morning Ireland as well, and inconsistency is often the problem with Dublin. They get one great game. I did the commentary on Galway Dublin, and they were really poor. So I didn't see what they were going to produce against Limerick. But the hype, it's a full house. It's an incredible atmosphere. It's going to be very different. Do you think that Niall Callaghan, who has proven to be quite a good manager, obviously winning an All-Ireland Club with the Fine and guiding Dublin to this, that they can cope with all that? This is possibly new for them in some ways, this level.
It is, and I'd say that's why he's kind of tried to insulate the players about doing any of the media stuff as well. Stay away from all that. We'll just do our normal routines. No one ever wants to talk to us anyway, so
fair point.
We'll just keep inside here in our own little bubble. We won't get too adventurous about this. But sometimes doing that, when your player hits the pitch, then he goes, "Oh, Jesus Christ, the place is massive, it's full. Oh my God, I was kind of insulated away from all this. Now suddenly I'm down here and Darragh Fitzgibbon is standing beside me like I didn't think he was as big as what he is." This kind of thing. Like, so I think what Dublin would be trying, or what Dublin have to guard of, is the Cork at the start are going to come with unbelievable ferocity. They'll be running, they'll be man-to-man all over the pitch. If you think of the last day, the Dublin player around the middle third of the pitch was allowed to get on the ball because the Limerick half-back line were zoning. Now, Mark Coleman, Joyce, all those boys are going to push up like Downey. If Downey means he has to go into the middle of the field to follow whoever he's marking, he'll be in there. So there'll be no easy ball to kind of get you into the game to try to hit it inside the inside forwards. The flip side of that, of course, will be that inside again, they will have goal scoring chances. Dublin, you'd expect every time Cork play, that's the way they play, no problem, that's fine. But Dublin, I think, will be focused on when we get it inside 25 yards and we have a 1v1 or a 2v2, we have to make that count. I think that's going to be the key for Dublin. I think that might keep their focus in the arena to an extent that they won't get too carried away with what's going on around them. They'll just know their job. But this is going to be some talk about a spin cycle. The first 5 or 6 minutes of this game now, the Dublin players' heads, they're going to have to be fair strong in there to keep in this. And then once it settles, they'll be fine. I've no doubt about that. But it's just to get to the pitch of it quickly is going to be key.
You've obviously strong connections. You're a Cork man. What's the feeling in Cork, having won the Munster Championship and have had a break? They have players coming out injured, others coming back. So what's the feeling like?
Well, I think, look, there's a sense that they're under pressure and that this has to be the year now that Limerick are gone, and we're hearing a lot of that. And I just don't really see somebody as pragmatic as Pat Ryan buying into any of that or being fooled by any of it. And we saw some silly stuff there, particularly after the league final, in relation to people making predictions and all that type of stuff. And like, they got a major land that time when they went down to the Gaelic grounds. So I think, look, the reality for Cork, by and large, Marty, you know this, like, I mean, the lads will know it. You go out and you play Kilkenny or Tipperary in a league game in the middle of winter or February or March, there'll be 25,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So every time you put on a Cork jersey, there's pressure. Every time. There was pressure on them last year when they were going down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh to save their season and had to beat Limerick, who hadn't been beaten for 20 years. There was pressure on them when they had to go and play Limerick a second time. There's pressure on them this year. So like their deal, I don't know if the whole pressure thing is as much of a problem for them, because they know themselves when they rock up on Saturday and they run out there, the chances are there's probably going to be the guts of about 60,000 Cork people there. That'll bring pressure as well. But the sense that most of us get is they're fine with that. They understand it. They understand that it goes with the territory. And like, but at the same time, it is difficult to try and generate, like you have your beefs, let's call them, your local beefs, particularly in Munster. When you don't meet a team, no, obviously they met last year, but it was a kind of a funny game last year, the time that it was played, when it was played, and it was a very different Dublin team. Like, there's a huge element of mystery around this fixture because I think it largely hinges on whether Dublin can come with the same level of performance again. I think what we do know is that Cork will play to a certain pitch. We've only really seen them fall off that once, but they haven't really stitched together a full, you're never going to put a full 75-minute performance together. That's impossible in modern intercounty hurling. You'll have your spells, but they haven't really played. I mean, you had a half an hour against, obviously, the first half an hour against Clare in the first round. The game against Tipperary was possibly over before the ball was even thrown in. Got landed down in the Gaelic grounds. And then against Waterford the last day, it was an odd game. So the only real game that you can kind of look to from a form perspective was the way they stood up. And that was the kind of game that I think Cork teams would have lost badly in the past. And they didn't this time round. And I suppose that's probably what a lot of people will draw an element of optimism going into this weekend.
Let's have a vote, the three of you. I know what Rory O'Neill's vote will be. Cork or Dublin for the All-Ireland final, lads? Who gets the nod?
For me, it'll be Cork. When all's said and done, course and distance, use of the pressure, all that kind of stuff, goal threat inside. I mean, like Limerick, Dublin didn't cough up a huge amount of goal scoring chance actually against Limerick. There was one unbelievable save from Sean Brennan from Aaron Gillan. But I just think that when you play down, I remember blowing Killarney years ago, we played Cork, and I remember looking down the pitch from the town end, we'll say, and all I saw was red. And it is a daunting thing now. There's no good in saying otherwise. Like
it is, Brendan. It is daunting. Like when you see it, and when you see it stacked up in the terraces and the stands, it can be suffocating.
Yeah, and don't say you don't look up. I mean, some fellas, I never see the outside the pitch. Like maybe because I was in the goals, I had more time to be looking around. But you do get that sense that when the momentum comes, and I think eventually Dublin or Cork will get to the end of Dublin. I think, and they are primed to get to a final. They're mature enough. Their manager, I have huge time for Pat Ryan. He's an exceptional manager. When you think of, was it last year, he was a 65 away from being maybe gone. The knives have been sharpened, but I think that's actually made him better. I think it's made him better. The fact that it was nearly all taken away, I think you appreciate it, and he never took it for granted, I'd say, but it just gives you that extra edge in your head, I think, if you're a manager, that you're that close to, and everyone talking about you and all that. So this Cork team are ready to win. And I think no matter what pressure you put on them, like Rory said, I think that they have enough in the tank to do the job.
You, Jackie? Dublin or Cork?
I think Cork just about, Marty. I feel it's their time. I feel they learned a valuable lesson again, Limerick in the round robin. I feel there's a maturity within the group and with Pat Ryan. But I expect this game to be different to Kilkenny and Tipp. I expect it to be more open, more loose play. I'd say the Kilkenny Tipp will be more attritional. I think that will suit both teams. But I have a feeling Dublin could get goals. I really do. The way Cork defend, they push out. They're happy to push out and leave that pocket of space. And Sean Donoghue, Owen Downey and Niall O'Leary are relatively comfortable in that scenario. But the pace of this Dublin, Brian Hayes, these guys, Fergal Whiteley, being able to get in and get off the shoulder of runners coming through that middle. I see Dublin getting goals, but I feel Cork maybe having the answers and just about getting over the line.
Okay, so Cork get the vote from our panel. In terms of Tipperary and Kilkenny, I mean, a lot of our colleagues in the punditry business are telling me, they think Kilkenny will do this. They look like a sleeping giant beginning to evolve and develop. I saw Kilkenny against Galway in the Leinster final, and they were in control. It was actually no challenge. But have they got another gear in them, Jackie, do you think? Because I think they'll probably need it against Tipperary.
They've been inconsistent at times, Marty, and that's the big worry from you. Look again, Dublin, they had that game done at half time, switched off. And in fairness, we've learned that this Dublin team, they're quite resilient, but still they switched off against Galway. And if you look back through the last year or so, they do have that in them. But you would like to think Tipperary will just sharpen that mind a little bit stronger. And when Tipp do get on top, and there's no doubt about they will get on top, that Kilkenny will dig in and won't switch off and concede these soft goals like they've had. There's pressure on Kilkenny. There is a feeling of pressure here in terms of losing the minor in the 20s. The last 2 All-Irelands we played against Tipp, they've beaten us. We haven't won an All-Ireland in 10 years. That's a decade. So there's an element of pressure. And with Limerick gone, it's kind of given everyone a lease of life going, we can win this, you know. So it's open for everyone. I do feel Kilkenny will be probably a more consistent team. And when they do have these lulls, I think that they will shut it down a little bit more. I think Owen Cody returning offers them another dynamic. They have probably in Mossy Keown in better form this year, Billy Ryan in better form this year, Jordan Malloy has been a lot of energy. Cian Kenny is probably playing at a little higher level than he was last year. I think when you stack up all those, Kilkenny just about.
I'm smiling, Jackie. You know, a decade is like a famine in Kilkenny. You should be from Clare. We do it every. Well, we're better now, but 81 years. But I have to laugh and smile. I know where you're coming from. Tipperary. I did the Tipperary Galway game, Brendan, and I thought Tipperary were improving. I think Liam Cahill has done a great job. They seem to be sharper. I think they have the forwards as well. And if they click, they could seriously ask questions of Kilkenny. What's your thoughts? Never mind mine.
I think Tipper brought a new energy, which I think has enthused the supporters. I mean, I went to the game against Limerick, obviously, in Tyrrell. Tipp supporters went that day because they said it's the first day out, it's the old enemy in Limerick. We have them at home, so you never know what will happen. And all around the stand as the Tip crack started, the belief started to get through Tipp supporters. You know what? I'm watching them young fellas down there with the older bucks like John McGrath and Jason Ford and these lads, like they're not still gone away either. But they have a different energy about them this year, and getting through Munster was a huge push on. And I'm delighted for Liam because he's done a huge job, a great job for Tipp. I see what he went through last year, especially after the Cork game. But inside and outside the county, it was extremely unfair, the kind of christening they got. But he understands that that's the nature of it. But he bottled it, and now we're seeing it out the other side. But it'll be a different test for this Tipp team on Sunday. It's the first time we've been in Croke Park in a fair while now. I think the directness of Kilkenny's play, I think could be the key for Kilkenny, in that they'll get the ball in, they'll hit it long inside of TJ and Cody and the boys in there. And it's very hard for you to sit somebody in Croke Park. The speed of the game in Croke Park is different to a Munster Championship game. The tempo and the rhythm of the game is different. The field is obviously more vast. It's harder to cover the ground. So it's more 1v1 battles. But I think the flip side of that then is that if Jake Morris breaks the line, Tipperary are the best team in the country for getting goals. Once they get inside or beat the offside trap inside the opposition 65 and they head on, more often than not, they make the right decision. And it's a skill of Tipp, I suppose. They can hit that stick past 35 yards to hand. As Jackie knows, like if you're hedging and a fella breaks through, you want to step out to meet him. And as you take the step, the ball whizzes past you into some fella's hand at the position that he wants to hit it, and it's in the roof of the net. So that skill set is something Tipp will have to lean on big time if they're going to get across the line here, creating goal chances and taking them. But the energy they brought this year has been fantastic, and it's led them to this point, and there's no reason why they can't get over this one either.
And the Tipperary full back line, Robert Doyle, Owen and Michael. I think Robert Doyle has been excellent, by the way, a cornerback. But do you think that the Tipperary full back line, this will probably be their biggest test, I would imagine, that Kilkenny inside line, particularly with Owen Cody back, will be a major threat?
It will, yeah. And I think the pace that Robert Doyle has brought, I had Robert at under 20 now, and he's seriously fast now. He is lightning. So he probably would end up, I'd say, taking maybe Owen Cody because of the speed he has. But you're right, the maturity of the inside forward line of Kilkenny, there's no greed. There's teak tough seasoned campaigners that's coming in, cute as foxes. Like, I mean, if you try to play in front of TJ Reid, he plays the Hurling. Do you know what I mean? If he goes in front, he breaks it down to somebody else to get a goal. So it's all these little decisions. So you're right, it is really difficult. No more than we'd have faced back in the day when I played against TJ and all. Like, I mean, this is what you want to test yourself against. But you're right, they'll have to be really lit up now. And they'll also, if they break the ball out, the half-back line will have to come back really quick to support it. Because again, if a Kilkenny guy gets the ball in his hand, no more than a Tipp fella, they all want to score goals, Marty. Like, this is going to be like a goals only game for a while, because the very minute a goal's on here, and it's been the same way 9, 10 and 11, you get inside 25 yards, a chance of a goal, go for the goal. No soft options hitting it over the bar. And both teams will have the same attitude. That's what's going to make it so electric. Like,
whetting my appetite for the whole weekend. Rory, you're the neutral one on this one. Tipp and Kilkenny. From a Cork perspective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I think it's obviously a much more difficult game to call, and we spoke about the rivalry earlier and the impact that that could potentially have. But look, as we said, they haven't met in championship for so long. I think Kilkenny are the only players really with All Ireland medals. Is there anybody from? Oh, Noel McGrath has one, and John has one. And that's a good question, actually. I suppose, like, one of the things that you probably would look at Tipperary for, we'll say, from a deficit is experience. They are very young, and they're coming with a very young team. And this is obviously a very different environment. It's a new challenge for them. Kilkenny will be much more experienced in terms of being in many semi-finals. They have a lot of Croke Park experience. They understand how the game plays there. And I do think that's a bit of an advantage. Can they get enough change in that half forward line, which is, as we said, a very young Sam O'Farrell is going to be an unbelievable player. Ormond is absolutely hurling out of his skin as well. And I think Jake coming out there has definitely given him a new lease of life. They're getting a lot more of a return from Jason Ford inside. He's no longer on the freeze as much, obviously, because Darragh McCarthy has taken over that responsibility. But is this potentially a game where maybe you start a Noel McGrath as opposed to have him as a finisher, just to get you into the game with somebody with his absolute acute intelligence and his hurling brain and hurling IQ, just to get Tipperary settled down and just to have that presence on the field at the beginning of the match? Their team selection will be very interesting from that point of view. But if I was to pick a winner and call it, Marty, I'd be surprised if Kilkenny lose, put it like that. But Marty, the way things are going this year's championship hurling and football, you're surprised every 5 minutes something else happens. So, like, I mean, what's the prediction really worked? I think it's very, very hard to call. I expect a big Tipperary showing. I think they're in, I wouldn't necessarily call it bonus territory. This is Tipperary hurling we're talking about, but this is definitely where they wanted to get back to. They're back in a semi-final. They're back in Croke Park. They're back in the big time. That suits Tipp. That suits their mentality. I think they'll come with a performance, but I'm not sure if it'll be good enough.
I sit on the fence and say we'll go to extra time and penalties, please God. Well, not really, please God, for penalties, but anyway, extra time will do us fine. We'll drag it out a bit. Lads, we really thank you. All joking aside, I loved the chat today, and I hope that everybody who's watching the RTÉ GAA podcast has enjoyed it as well. We're going to have a wonderful, wonderful weekend of hurling. Cork against Dublin, Tipperary against Kilkenny on the Saturday and Sunday game on TV, and both games covered live on the radio as well. So Jackie, Tyrrell, Brendan Cummins and Rory, thank you very, very much. I've enjoyed being Jackie Hurley this week. And so we'll give it back to Jackie, I presume, next week. Anyway, from all of us, have a great hurling weekend.
Dublin